Hey there, guys. All right, today we are back with another episode of History Matters, and this time we are asking the question of why did Somalia fail? A short animated documentary. Now, I don't know by what metric we are saying that they have failed. I don't really know anything about Somalia except for pirates off the coast, but mainly they're doing what they're doing because I believe Western companies take advantage of Somalia. Uh, um, but I don't know if that's going to be within the purview of this video. That's probably something for a different video. But anyways, I don't know the answer. I have no guesses. So let's go ahead and dive right in.
Somalia is a name which has unfortunately become synonymous with failed state. It's a nation with extremely high levels of poverty, one whose government is barely existent, and notably it's a country racked with violence. But how did this come to be? Why did Somalia fail? So, as of 1945, Somalia, like most of Africa, was under European control. It was divided into two areas, British Somaliland in the north and Somalia to the south and east. This was also run by Britain at this point, who had taken it from Italy in the Second World War. Now, Britain's first instinct was to ask the brand new UN, maybe we could keep it, but the Somali people were pretty sick of Europeans and the UN said no. And thus, it was run by the British, who allowed for the establishment of political parties, and under orders from the UN, it was passed back to Italy in 1950, on the sole condition that they give it independence within 10 years. And in 1960, both the British and Italian Somalilands were given independence, and very soon afterwards they united into the Somali Republic.
Nice.
At first, the Republic functioned well. The people of Somalia had free elections, freedom of speech, and the economy was growing.
Oh, let me guess, they voted for a communist and someone got upsetty spaghetti. It's gonna be my guess.
However, there were two major issues which plagued the Somali Republic. The first was that politics was dominated by the deeply entrenched clan system and as a result became fairly partisan. And the second was the idea of Greater Somalia. These lands were home to some and often a majority Somali population, and many in government were divided on whether or not to push for territorial expansion or to simply let things lie. This question wouldn't get answered anytime soon, since this was the Cold War, and 1969 meant that it was time for a communist revolution. A man called Mohammed Siad Barre, with the help of some of the army, seized control of the country and began to implement widespread...
Okay, so wait, was he a supposed communist, or...
sweeping reforms? Things were going pretty well, right? Well, yes, except for the fact that Bahrain had a clever idea in 1977, let's invade Ethiopia, specifically to gain this region called the Ogaden and incorporate it and the Somalis living there into Somalia proper. And with the help of the USSR, it would be simple.
Okay, so he's claims to be communist, but he's not really a communist.
Or at least that it would have been, barring the fact that the Soviet Union didn't approve and so aided Ethiopia along with a large number of Cuban troops. The war went poorly for Somalia, and by 1978 it had lost, and many Somalis living in eastern Ethiopia fled for Somalia. Within the space of a year, Somalia's population went from just under 4 million to over 5 million. And as you'll have guessed, this caused issues with infrastructure and food supply, and the national humiliation of losing a war caused major discontent in Bahrain's regime. There was an attempted coup and a harsh crackdown that followed, in which Bahrain focused on certain clans. To make matters worse, Somalia's food and water supply had begun to collapse, and so it was reliant on foreign aid, which Bahrain only gave to clans which supported him. Over the course of the 1980s, Somalia grew worse. The economy entered...
So the military coup is what fucked over this country.
Freefall, and Bahrain's government became much more brutal in suppressing any challenge to its authority. This led to growing armed resistance by the sidelined clans, and by 1990, civil war. Most of Somalia fell to the rebels pretty quickly, and by 1991 Bahrain had fled the country, never to return, and also northern lands here declared independence as the Republic of Somaliland. And whilst many clans had put aside their differences to oust Bahrain, now that he was gone there was nothing keeping them together, and so, civil war. Again. Or still. As you all know, things didn't get much better after this. American and UN intervention did nothing to help, and Somalia's state only got worse. Law and order had completely broken down, meaning jobs that provided food were no longer safe, and meant controlling aid was the quickest route to power, meaning that Somalia was never given the opportunity to get back on its feet. I hope you enjoyed.
Okay. And so that was why Somalia failed. That was depressing. There's no other way to say it, no other way around it. That was just depressing. Nothing, don't know what else to say about that video there. Okay, so it went a way that I didn't entirely expect it. It seems like Western powers are actually pretty hands-off-ish aside from the USSR. Now, of course, this was likely very simplified, and perhaps there was more Western intervention than what was mentioned. Um, but at the very least, it seems like Western intervention. Well, of course, it did still screw over this country because it was the USSR that came in and supported a military coup. Um, and then they did not back that person that they helped get into power for whatever reason that was not talked about. Invade Ethiopia. And so then he lost that war, which losing a war like that it gets pricey. It gets expensive, and of course the refugee crisis that came with Somali people fleeing from Ethiopia and going to Somalia. That does not help. So I don't know what else to say. Damn. That's, sometimes when we talk about these countries though that have failed states, um, and are in these struggling times, what we often see is we see well, obviously there is a cycle of violence here in Somalia, but what we see is like a series of um like coups, right? We usually see multiple coups happening, multiple leaders coming up and failing and then getting replaced. And that's what tends to lead to these struggling countries. Here with Somalia, it seems like it was just one man, one dictator came in, fucked it all up superbly, and now they're stuck for the time being. And oof, that he really fucked over the country, didn't he? So I wonder how much of that is then tied to, like, I'm curious about the deep-rooted uh, tribal clan hatred going on in Somalia then, because usually one dictator typically doesn't seem to really be enough to lead a country into a downward spiral like this. Um, Usually it's a series of them, right? But here, no, maybe it's just the clans. The clans have a really long history of hatred with each other. That's essentially what I'm curious about. How much do they hate each other? And whether or not, like, I want to know more about how much the interclan rivalries play into the downward spiral here of Somalia. That was that video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more. I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.